Human skeleton from 10 years ago was just discovered inside an abandoned house, shocking scientists. A haunting and heartbreaking story has just unfolded in Paterson, New Jersey, where a human skeleton was discovered inside an abandoned building that was once the city police station. The building had been inactive for over 35 years after a major fire in 1980 left it abandoned. At that time, the building was used as a detention center, but now this shocking discovery has left everyone stunned. Specifically, the skeleton was found while the Greenbaum family, the current owners of the building, were in the process of selling it. During an inspection, they discovered the human remains in a jail cell, and the frightening part is that the door to the cell was still locked. The police quickly launched an investigation and theorized that this person may have been locked in the cell for up to 10 years. They found clues, such as a water bottle and a prescription nearby, which led them to believe the victim may have lived in despair for an extended period before dying. The theory suggests the victim could have been a homeless person who accidentally found shelter in the building but was tragically locked in the jail cell and unable to escape. Trapped in a small, isolated space with no help, they would have suffered a painful death that no one knew about. This story is particularly heartbreaking, especially knowing that this homeless person was abandoned in such desperate circumstances. Susan Greenbaum, the owner of the building, expressed her emotions upon hearing about the discovery. "This is such a tragic thing, and we are very angry about it. Our family has lived in this community, and it's sad to see issues related to homelessness still persist in our society." However, the police also warned that this is just a theory and that more time is needed for further investigation. Identifying the victim and clarifying the cause of death will require more evidence. In the wake of this event, the story quickly spread and gained attention from the public. Many expressed their sorrow and sympathy for the homeless person's death. If the theory is true, imagining a person living in such dire conditions, locked in a cell with no way out, facing death in isolation and despair, is enough to send chills down anyone's spine. If this truly happened, it would serve as a strong reminder of the importance of caring for the vulnerable in our society, including the homeless and those forgotten in the shadows of life. As you can see, it's terrifying, yet heartbreaking, that over the years, scientists, archaeologists, and many others have accidentally discovered skeletons and mummies in places where they seemed impossible, like in abandoned houses, old refrigerators, or even under a water drain. So, what recent discoveries of human skeletons and mummies hide behind them, and what stories and secrets are concealed? Let's explore that in the next section. The unfortunate mummies beneath the salt mine in Iran. Located near the village of Hamzalu, about 47 miles northwest of Zanjan, Iran, the Cherabad salt mine is famous for its salt rocks, gypsum, clay, and halite formed during the Miocene period, 5 to 23 million years ago. This mine is especially significant to the local people, but since 1993, when several mummies were found alongside ordinary salt crystals, mining has been prohibited. Specifically, during that time, miners at the Dawslak salt mine near Hamzehli and Cherabad came across the head of a mummy dating back to the year 300 AD. The head was so well preserved that even the gold earrings retained their original color. Additionally, the hair and mustache were also intact. Immediately, Tehran authorities halted the mining operations and sent a team of scientists to the site. After digging deeper in hopes of recovering the full body, archaeologists found a leather shoe with a complete foot. They also discovered 3 iron knives, a woolen garment, a silver needle, a string, a leather cord, a grinding stone, walnuts, some ceramic fragments, woven fabric, and several broken bones. In 2004, archaeologists uncovered another body, and over the next 6 years, a total of 4 more mummies were discovered along with a large number of artifacts made from wood, metal tools, clothing, and ceramics. All these mummies date back about 2,200 years, to the time of the Achaemenid Empire, the first Persian Empire. Archaeologists suspect all the mummies were miners and victims of a mine collapse. To date, at least 8 different mummies have been found in the area, each with their own secrets. For example, the first mummy discovered had blood type B+, and a 3D image of his skull revealed cracks around his eyes and other injuries, suggesting he may have been struck by someone before he died. His clothes and the gold earrings indicate he was wealthy and had a high status in society. However, the reason for his presence in the mine remains a mystery. Meanwhile, the fourth mummy was a 16-year-old teenager who was crushed in a small cave of the salt mine, and this was the best preserved body found. The fifth mummy was discovered to have a tapeworm infection, indicating that he may have eaten raw meat or undercooked food. Notably, this was the first ancient Iranian mummy to show such a parasite. The sixth mummy is still in the mine because it is too fragile to be moved. Archaeologists also believe that these miners did not die together, and the oldest body found dates back to 9,150 BC. They also suspect there may be more mummies in the mine, as they've found various body parts from unidentified bodies. The mummies found at Cherabad have attracted worldwide scientific attention and prove that salt preserves bodies as well as a desert would. The weight of the salt pressed down on the unfortunate miners, and the salt crystals sucked all the moisture from their bodies, mummifying them. Currently, 5 out of the 6 mummies are on display at the Archaeological Museum in Zanjan and the National Museum of Iran in Tehran. If you have the chance, you can visit to see them in person. Ancient mummy, forgotten in a garage in California. One ordinary day in 1980, a woman in Lemon Grove, California, was cleaning out her garage when she unexpectedly discovered a strange cardboard box. Curious, she opened it and almost fainted when she saw the mummified remains of a young woman and an infant inside. Terrified, the woman immediately called the police, and soon after, the Lemon Grove police arrived at the scene prepared to investigate a possible murder. However, they uncovered another mystery. The 2 bodies found in the garage in California could be murder victims, but this was not a recent incident. In fact, they had died many centuries earlier. After extensive analysis, researchers discovered that the woman's mummy was actually that of a 15-year-old girl at the time of death, and the child was about 1 year old. Their bodies were remarkably well preserved, with the teenager's hair still attached to her head, while the infant's ears and nose remained fully intact. It's likely that the dry and cold desert air caused the bodies to lose moisture, preventing bacteria from growing and decomposing the flesh. According to the researchers, the 2 mummies curled up together may reflect that they died while sleeping. However, the exact cause of death could not be determined. Carbon dating revealed that the mummies likely died between the years 1040 and 1260 AD. Still, details on how and when the 2 mummies were brought to the garage in California remain vague, so the police began to search for clues, trying to unravel the mystery of the mummies in Lemon Grove. Of course, with their professionalism and investigative skills, the police soon discovered that in 1966, while years before the mummies were found in the garage, 2 young men in California were fascinated by mummies and archaeology. They had heard that Native American tribes in northern Mexico had a tradition of burying the dead in caves, where the bodies would naturally be preserved by the dry, cold air. The 2 men traveled to Mexico and spent over a month searching in caves in Chihuahua. Their efforts paid off when they found not 1, but 2 bodies in a cave. The 2 men then successfully smuggled the mummies across the border to Lemon Grove, California, and stored them in a friend's garage. However, before they knew what to do with the mummies, the 2 men had to enlist to fight in the Vietnam War. So, the mummies were left forgotten in the garage for 14 years. When the 2 men returned from the war, they sought to atone by donating the mummies to the San Diego Museum of Man, a renowned museum with a collection of mummies. However, since the mummies weren't legally theirs, they had no right to donate them. 500-year-old human skeleton, found under a sewer in England. Recently, archaeologists in London made an intriguing discovery when they found a complete human skeleton while working on a sewer construction project in the Bermondsey area near the River Thames. What's remarkable about this skeleton is that it dates back to the medieval period, approximately 500 years ago. The skeleton was found face down, with the face pressed into the ground, which left experts both surprised and curious about the story behind the man's death. They began their analysis and later determined that the skeleton belonged to a man approximately 35 years old. Interestingly, he was still wearing a pair of high leather boots, a rare find for the medieval period. Beth Richardson, an expert at MOLA, stated, "These boots have helped us imagine what life might have been like for this man in the late 15th or early 16th century." She added, "We have never found boots this high. Typically, shoes and boots only reached ankle height." According to her, this discovery has provided archaeologists with a better understanding of how people survived under harsh conditions during that time. Although no significant injuries were found on the skeleton, It's believed that the man may have worked hard to make a living, possibly as a fisherman, sailor, or mudlarker along the banks of the River Thames in search of valuables. The dangerous nature of the River Thames at that time further supports this theory, and it's likely that the work associated with the river contributed to his death. The skeleton was discovered near a new sewer construction site as part of the $5.2 billion Tideway Tunnel project, an important project for London. While discoveries like this help archaeologists learn more about life during the medieval period, the exact reason why the skeleton was found face down, right next to the River Thames, remains a mystery. It's very possible that we may never know the true cause of this man's death, but I believe that these findings will certainly shed light on the habits and professions of people in the past, helping us understand the difficulties and dangers they faced in their daily lives. Human remains found in a refrigerator. On January 6th, the police in India made a shocking announcement after human remains, including a skull and bones, were discovered inside an abandoned house near Chota Nikara in the Ernakulam district of India. What was even more disturbing was that the remains were not buried or discarded, but rather stored in a refrigerator deep inside the house, which had been uninhabited for 2 decades. The house is located on a large private property and had been locked up and left abandoned for years. Its remote location and isolation had made it a place that was almost completely ignored for many years. However, on January 6th, an investigation by experienced scientists was conducted after a tip-off from the Chota Nikara police station. When the police team entered to inspect the house, they were not prepared for the strange and haunting discovery they would make. The human remains were found inside the refrigerator, adding a bizarre and puzzling twist to the case. Authorities have yet to identify the victim or determine why the remains were stored in a refrigerator. This has raised many unanswered questions. Why has the house been abandoned for 2 decades? Who placed the remains in the refrigerator? And most importantly, who was the deceased and what happened to them? The local police have begun a detailed investigation into the case. While initial information has not been fully disclosed, the discovery has shaken the community and caused widespread concern. The house and the property where the remains were found will be thoroughly examined to uncover any clues that might help shed light on the mystery behind these remains. 6,000-year-old skeleton, found intact at a construction site. At a construction site in Brazil, archaeologists uncovered 2 human skeletons that are about 6,000 years old, in a nearly perfectly preserved state. Specifically, the skeletons were found along the BR-470 highway, near the town of Ilhota in the state of Santa Catarina, Brazil. This area was once an island surrounded by a lagoon and was home to ancient tribes during prehistoric times. The surprising thing about the skeletons is that they are intact, especially the skull and leg bones, with their teeth still preserved, providing scientists with clearer insights into life during that period. The discovery took place in May while workers were expanding the road. After bringing the skeletons to Beta Analytics Laboratory in Florida, scientists confirmed that they date back to approximately 5,880 years ago. Notably, according to archaeologist Valdir Luiz Schwengber, who led the excavation, the skeletons were found only about 24 inches below the surface, suggesting that this was once a secluded area lacking in water and unable to support long-term habitation. As a result, scientists believe that this site may have served as a burial ground for ancient peoples. Artifacts found in the area indicate that the ancient inhabitants primarily relied on resources from the waterways, particularly fish such as catfish, flounder, and perch. The small size of the fish suggests that they were mostly young fish caught in shallow waters. This serves as crucial evidence about the lifestyle of people in the region during ancient times. In the same research, archaeologists also discovered clues related to the Jikwabu tribes, one of the ancient groups that lived in Brazil around 10,000 years ago. These tribes are believed to have been part of a migration wave of hunters from Asia to the Americas via the Bering Strait, bringing with them hunting, fishing techniques, and unique customs. However, very little is known about these cultures because they left no written records or lasting agricultural evidence, and when European settlers arrived, these cultures were nearly wiped out. Today, interdisciplinary researchers from fields like biology, archaeology, and history continue to study the skeletons to learn more about the settlement and way of life of ancient tribes along the Santa Catarina coastline. Some experts believe this discovery could help us better understand the lives of prehistoric inhabitants in the Amazon region, where up to 1,500 villages existed as far back as 1250 BC, with nearly two-thirds of them still undiscovered. 2,000-year-old child remains stored in ancient vessels. On November 22, 2024, a team of Chinese archaeologists made waves in the scientific community when they announced the discovery of 128 child remains buried in ancient vessels as part of an ancient burial ritual. This discovery was made in the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, where experts not only found the remains of children, but also unearthed many coins, pottery, and tiles during the excavation. Archaeologists believe these children lived during the Han Dynasty, which spanned from 202 BC to 220 AD, a time when burial customs and rituals were markedly different from today. During the Han Dynasty, cremation was not performed on children. Instead, they were buried in vessels. According to experts, some vessels contained a single child's remains, while in other cases, multiple vessels were used to create a protective house for the children's souls, shielding them from the elements. From a modern perspective, burying children in vessels may seem unusual. However, researchers argue that this practice wasn't much different from the use of coffins in today's burial rituals. Lam Wenqiang, an expert at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, further explained, cremation appeared quite late in ancient China, especially after the Han Dynasty. Some graves from the Bronze Age may have involved cremation, but in the Central Plains, this practice only emerged later. This also explains why the children's remains were not cremated before being placed in the vessels. Additionally, there was a deeper reason why burial in vessels became widespread. Building Han-style tombs during that era was financially burdensome. In a society with a high child mortality rate, constructing elaborate and grand tombs, as was customary in the Han Dynasty, was simply unfeasible for common people. Han tombs were often intricately built, featuring brick chambers filled with items the deceased might need in the afterlife. For poorer families, organizing such an elaborate funeral was nearly impossible, making the use of vessels a more practical alternative. Of course, burial in vessels wasn't the only burial custom in ancient China. Earlier, in 2012, archaeologists in Tamil Nadu, southern India, discovered burial vessels dating back to 1800 to 1500 BC, even earlier than those found in Inner Mongolia. In July 2024, in Budapest, Hungary, experts also found urns containing cremated remains dating from 2200 to 1450 BC, showing that this practice was not confined to China, but was also common in many ancient cultures. These discoveries not only expand our understanding of ancient burial practices, but also raise curiosity about how ancient societies protected the souls of the deceased. If I say that each urn contained not just remains, but also a piece of history and an untold story about the lives of the children who passed long ago, would you believe me or think that I'm exaggerating? On 500-year-old, 6 feet tall, skeleton, found in a kneeling position in a coffin. Recently, a remarkable archaeological discovery has drawn the attention of both the scientific community and the people of South Korea. A nearly 6 feet tall skeleton was unearthed from an ancient tomb dating back to the Shilla period in Gyeongju, North Gyeongsang Province, South Korea. The tomb was built about 1,500 years ago and holds many mysteries that continue to intrigue archaeologists. The remains belong to a man, believed to be the tallest among the Three Kingdoms period skeletons found on the Korean peninsula, sparking various theories about his life and status. When the skeleton was found in tomb number 2 in a wooden coffin, experts initially measured the height at about 5 feet 9 inches. However, due to the position of the neck bones near the chest, they estimate that the man's actual height could have been around 6 feet. This is a notable height as most skeletons from the Three Kingdoms period have an average height of only about 5 feet 5 inches. This suggests that the man was physically imposing and could have been an important figure in society at the time. However, the position of the body is quite strange. The corpse was not placed with the head facing upward, but with the face pressed down, and the legs and thighs bent unnaturally. Experts believe this indicates the body was not placed in a natural position during the burial, possibly because the coffin was pre-made and did not fit the deceased's asses. Another unique feature is the deformation of the man's spine, resembling signs of a herniated disc. This suggests he may have endured hard physical labor throughout his life. Unfortunately, one of the disappointments is the lack of grave goods around the tomb to help identify the deceased. The grave goods found were mostly pottery, along with some iron blocks that could be parts of tools like sickles or hoes, discovered near the head of the skeleton. However, no weapons were found, making it even more difficult to determine the man's identity. Archaeologists are still studying the skeleton, hoping to gather more information about the life and status of this tall individual. Dear friends, the mystery of the 6-feet-tall skeleton has now concluded our journey of exploration for today. So, out of the discoveries mentioned above, which one impressed you the most? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to give the channel a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. For now, goodbye and see you next time.